Florida House. She's going to be sponsoring some of our legislation that we're going over today. And the incoming President and CEO of Florida Tax Watch, my good friend Jeff Kottkamp, is here. Thank you guys for being here. And thank you guys for all taking time out of your day to once again talk about fiscal and financial accountability of local governments. My name is Blaise Ingoglia. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of the great state of Florida. It is great to be here today as we highlight the work that we have already done to expose wasteful and excessive spending in local governments and to announce some legislative reforms to continue to make local governments more accountable and transparent to the taxpayers that they represent. Since Governor DeSantis appointed me as Chief Financial Officer in July, my office and I have absolutely hit the ground running, calling for local government accountability and exposing how much taxpayer dollars local governments are spending wastefully and excessively. We are being unrelenting when it comes to this issue. We are out in the communities every day making the case for true property tax reform. Housing affordability is a big issue here in the state of Florida. Property taxes is chief among them. We have seen a run-up in property taxes in the mid-2000s. Government didn't learn its lesson. We gave an extra property tax exemption back then, and now we are on the verge of hopefully giving the largest homesteaded property exemption on property taxes that the state has ever seen. So this is an exercise, is what we're working for, showing that governments can indeed cut their budgets and not affect services at all. Now, some have called me the Jim Cantori of wasteful spending because when I show up in your town, it's usually not good news for the taxpayers in that area. Now, we have promised during these exercises to expose local government's excessive and wasteful spending, regardless of whether you are a blue city or county or a red city or county. We have promised to praise a local government, regardless if they showed fiscal restraint, regardless if they are a blue city or county or a red city or county, and we have kept those promises. The taxpayers of this state should have confidence that as your CFO, I care about one thing: exposing overspending and overtaxation regardless of who is doing it. Now, to date, we have exposed more than $1.86 billion, and that is billion with a B, in wasteful, excessive spending in just 11 governments. Now, that wasteful spending of $1.86 billion is not a cumulative total. That is the number of last year alone. Local governments have been taking in a record amount of revenues. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, the state was taking in about $32 billion worth of property tax revenue. They are now taking in $56 billion worth of property tax property tax revenue. The coffers of local government have been expanding, and they're continuing to expand, and they will continue to expand until somebody stops them. And that's why constitutional reform is much needed. Now, going back to those 11 local governments, remember, that is not a cumulative total. That is just a total for last year. That is the amount of money those 11 governments took in and overtaxed and overspent in just 1 year. $190 million just in Orange County alone, a blue county. $112 million in Manatee County, a deep red county. $302 million in Miami-Dade County, now a red county. $22 million in the city of Orlando, showing some fiscal restraint, a blue city. The $344 million just recently, the last one in Palm Beach County, being the largest amount of excessive wasteful spending that we have found, and that is a blue county. Now, regardless of party makeup of any of those cities or counties, all 11 of them have one thing in common: excuses. Since day one, we predicted that local governments were going to do everything that they can and use every tool in their toolbox to defend their wasting of your tax dollars, specifically your property tax dollars. We predicted they were going to enlist their leftist editors to write Sunday editorials defending their bloat. Check. We said that they were going to lie to taxpayers in order for you to think that they would have to cut fire and police in order to give property tax relief. Check. That happened. We said that they were going to use your own tax dollars to lobby against you and wage a PR campaign against the taxpayers, you who are funding them for footing the bill for their excess. Check. That's happened. We said that they are going to attack and criticize our methodology, the very methodology we use to determine their wasteful spending. Double check, triple check. All of that is happening. Our FAFO methodology is simple, but yet profound and impactful. It is a way to put into context how large governments have grown, local governments have grown, and wasted your hard-earned tax dollars over the last 5 to 6 years. To find the wasteful spending, we started off with a baseline budget, and we increased it every year as an exercise, increasing it, accommodating for inflation and population to determine where government should reasonably be in terms of their budget today. However, local governments blew right past that number. And those are some of the eye-popping numbers that you see and the announcements that you're seeing on social media. That's where you're getting the $344 million in Palm Beach County, the $190 million in Orange County, the $199 million in Jacksonville. Almost every local government that we have reviewed, and we have reviewed a lot of local governments. Just because we haven't done press events and announced those numbers, trust me, we have reviewed a lot of these local governments. Almost every local government has shown zero fiscal restraint. They just took the extra tax money and they spent it. Never even thinking, it never even crossed their mind to giving back to the taxpayers in the form of property tax relief. Now, local governments and their leftist big government apologists are at it again. They're sitting on their editorial boards. They're claiming that our methodology that we do this is dubious. They're saying that it's out of touch. Not what my words, their words. It's bogus and it's not well thought out. They want you guys to believe that how we derive to this number is just some fictitious number. We made up the methodology to have this like grandstanding of how much government is excessively spent. Is it though? Is it bogus? Is it not well thought out? I think there are people that would staunchly disagree with that assessment, specifically the state of Colorado. I'm sorry to inform you, Palm Beach County. I'm sorry to inform you, Orange County, Jacksonville, but this is essentially the same calculation indexing for inflation and population that the state of Colorado uses to limit their own taxation of their own taxpayers. Colorado has used this taxpayer calculation for a while, since 1992. So local governments that try to justify their spending by casting doubt on our calculation, now that you know that the state of Colorado uses the same calculation, what's your excuse now? What is your excuse now? Now, we have worked to expose wasteful local governments, and we have been taking notes and crafting legislation to not only make governments more transparent about their spending, but also make it easy for you to hold them accountable. Now, to that end, we are here today announcing our pro-taxpayer legislative reforms. I'm going to go through some of the reforms with you today and make you understand why this is much needed. First, FAFO is an acronym that we use, the Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight. It is as much a marketing tool as it is as a policy proposal. And here's why. No one is going to pay attention if we labeled some government agency as budgetary oversight committee. Nobody's going to care. But when you label something and you catch somebody's attention, people all of a sudden, well, let me find out what that is about. So yes, FAFO is a way to catch people's attention so they understand and listen to the numbers, but we are serious about establishing the Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight. So in our proposed legislation, we want to codify the Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight and Florida statutes to increase accountability and transparency in local government and make this effort a long-term, permanent initiative. Protecting taxpayers should not have an expiration date, and neither should FAFO. Another thing we want to do with this proposed legislation is grant government employees, government contractors, government subcontractors, and taxpayers whistleblower protection so they can, if they contact our office to report waste, fraud, and abuse of our tax dollars. When we were together with the governor's office and the DOJ efforts, not almost every, but a lot of the information that we were getting of what was being excessively spent by local governments wastefully, fraudulently, waste, fraud, and abuse, we were being tipped off by people inside the government themselves. They were calling us, we were getting messages and say, hey, we do not want to go on record for fear of retaliation. So if you have a government contractor who realizes that they are performing a service for the local government and the local government is just turning around and wasting the money and not doing what they're supposed to be doing, the local contractor is put in a bad position because they don't want to blow the whistle because then they won't get another contract. These people want good governance. They want people to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. I've had taxpayers contact me and say, hey, we are going to lead you down this path. We need you to go take a look. But they don't want their name on it. So by offering them whistleblower protection and protecting them, I think we'll have more people come forward and show us where the true waste, fraud, and abuse are in these local governments. It will allow my office, the Department of Financial Services, to pursue financial penalties from local governments if they do not respond to our inquiries in a timely manner, including withholding any state funds until they do. Now, the Florida Constitution grants me vast authority, audit power, to go and audit any entity, both public and private, if we think that they are misusing, misappropriating, wasting taxpayer dollars. And we have been wielding that. Now, what is the hook for them to comply with us? Subpoenas. If we do not get the information from them, we can subpoena them. Orange County famously got subpoenas. We're still going through that process right now. We don't want to subpoena anyone. We want to get the information that is readily available, public information, so we can start compiling the information in order to inform the taxpayers of what's going on with your tax dollars in local government, so you can hold them accountable and they can be more transparent. But right now, there's no financial penalty for them. We want to make sure local governments are getting this information. I have had numerous taxpayers, taxpayer advocates, and businesses, including elected officials, come to me and say, I put in a public records request, I can't get any information. I want clarity on this contract, I can't get any information. And I tell them, you walk back into the office, you sit down with the administrator or the superintendent or whoever it is, and you flat out tell them, do not let me get CFO Ingoglia involved in this. And it's amazing, within 24 hours, they have that information. But you should not have to have that conversation with an elected official on public documents. They should be open and transparent and readily give that. So my take on this is that if we ask for the information on a Monday and we're giving you 5 days to compile the information, get it in 5 days. If you don't, then you face a $1,000 a day penalty. If you continue doing that, why would you come to the state and ask for an appropriation from the state and the state now give you money when you cannot even give the public documents to the public? I think that needs to change. The proposed legislation will require local governments to upload all of their government contracts into the state's fax system, which lists all of the contracts. You can go on, anyone can go on and view them, or something similar that is searchable and indexed. I cannot tell you how many times I've had, again, taxpayers and businesses come to me and say that they're trying to find contracts of money that they spent on. They put in public records requests, but they can't get it. The local governments will slow roll them. We think everything should be online, similar to what the state is doing. Be more open, be more transparent. We require each local government to submit an annual financial efficiency report to ensure uniform reporting across local governments of important financial information, such as cash on hand. How much cash does a local government have in their investments accounts, whether it is encumbered or non-encumbered? We know what the P&Ls are because that's the revenues, the tax coming in, and their budgets, the costs going out. We want to know how much cash you actually have on hand also. I want to know how much money are flowing to nonprofits by local governments. I want it delineated. I want it spelled out. I want to know exactly who you guys are funding because there may be duplication and triplication of efforts. We want to know salary information. You can go on a state's website and figure out what somebody at state government makes. You could just pull it up. Can you do that with local government? Some, but it's not uniform across the state. Why should someone in Okeechobee County be held differently than somebody in Miami-Dade County? If you're a resident, you're a taxpayer, you should have access, equal access to any and all of that information. And additionally, even though this is already within my jurisdiction, I would like it spelled out in this proposed legislation, that the proposal would codify the ability of Florida CFO, whether it is me or somebody else in the future, to recommend to the governor and to the cabinet the removal of any elected official who is found to have committed financial abuse, malfeasance, or misfeasance. When I took office, I made a promise to the taxpayers. I promised that I would be an unrelenting advocate for you. Through these legislative proposals, that's exactly what I am doing. I have said it at every stop on our local government accountability tour. FAFO is going to be a key part of my tenure as CFO. This issue of high property taxes is not going away. I am not going away. Government grows when people stop watching. Government grows when bureaucrats stop caring about the people that they serve. I will never stop watching. I will never stop caring. Government grows, quite frankly, when career politicians and bureaucrats forget that it's not their money, it's our money. I'm here to remind them that I, as your CFO, I am always going to have the taxpayers' back. Governments are raising record amounts of revenue, wasting your money while crying poor, but yet trying to raise your taxes year after year. It is a vicious cycle. The taxpayers are caught in the middle of it, and the taxpayers have had enough. I look forward to working with the governor and the legislature during this upcoming legislative session to get this across the finish line. I'm not going away. I literally wake up every day and have conversations. My office is probably like, oh, it's the CFO calling again. I talk to them almost every day and think of ways that we can be aggressive in this role as CFO and be an advocate for the taxpayer. I will tell you, and it's not a talking point, this is actual truth. We need people in government who are aggressive on the side of taxpayer, not on the side of government. We have too many people who start off with good intentions running for office, but then they quickly become part of the problem. We want to be part of the solution, a taxpayer solution. Thank you guys for coming here today. And at this point, I would like to call up Jeff Camp, who is the incoming president and CEO of Florida Tax Watch. Give him a big round of applause, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. It is a great day in the state of Florida. And as Blaise said, I'm Jeff Camp, the incoming president and CEO of Florida Tax Watch. I also had the privilege of being the 17th lieutenant governor in this great state. If you don't know, Tax Watch for 4.5 decades has been the leading government watchdog and public policy think tank in the state of Florida. We're nonpartisan. We're a scientific research institute, and we base what we do on data, facts, not opinion. And I can tell you this idea of our CFO to instill concepts like efficiency, accountability, and transparency in local government is long, long overdue. At Florida Tax Watch, one of our programs is the Government Productivity Awards. And so state employees that have done things above and beyond the call that save taxpayers money get nominated for the awards. A group of business leaders serve as judges, and we pick winners and give these state employees a cash award to thank them for looking out for the taxpayers. And why do we do that? We want to embed in the culture of government employees the very concepts that our CFO is talking about, to always be looking out for the taxpayer, to look for ways to do it better, to do it cheaper, to save the taxpayers money. And in the Productivity Awards instance, the taxpayers have been saved hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of years that we've had this program. And actually in next year, we're going to open chapters, local chapters, in Florida Tax Watch to serve as a watchdog over local government and bring productivity awards to the local level for the very reasons the CFO has talked about. I would like to give you an example of why what he's talking about is so needed. Some years ago, my wife and I were appointed by our county commission to serve on the Human Services Funding Committee, and we were part of a committee of citizens that went around and did site visits for all of the organizations that had applied for human services funding from the county. And at the end of that process, this group of citizens deliberated and decided which organization should get the money and how much they should get. But we also decided, let's don't spend it all. Let's don't spend it all. The county employees were beside themselves. They said, that's not even possible. That's not conceivable. We can't do that because it's not saving, and efficiency is not in their psyche. And that's exactly what the CFO is talking about, changing the mindset, changing the culture so that government employees know you're the boss. It's your money. It's so easy to spend other people's money, but it's your money. And so government employees at all levels should always be looking for ways to put the taxpayer first. That's what our CFO is doing. It's why we endorse this legislation and look forward to its passage.
Thank you, sir. Jeff Kottkamp brings up a very good point about government efficiency and workers who work in government. Look, I know that there are I personally know that there are a lot of good people who work in government who really, truly care. But over the years, we've had this culture of if you get budgeted it, you should spend it because you're not going to get it next year. You know what? Don't spend it. What's the worst thing that is going to happen? Government is going to become smaller and more accountable. So it's a culture issue. And another thing is that really frustrates me as being as a small business owner is that government is never going to run like a business. We can at least try. It's like, oh, it'll never run by business. Don't worry about it so we can waste and have as much waste, fraud, and abuse as possible. No, the taxpayers deserve and demand better. We should always be looking at P&Ls and balance sheets just like a business is doing and never, ever lose sight of the fact that on the other side of that is a taxpayer funding this. So the more we can put taxpayers first, as Governor Kottkamp said, the better we're going to be off as a state. At this time, I'd like to call up Representative Monique Miller, who is a sponsor of some of our legislation in the Florida House. Representative.
Chief Ingoglia is the hardest working guy in Tallahassee, and you're hearing only part of what's been going on, and I'm excited about this legislation to kick it off and make it permanent in Florida law. So, distinguished guests, thank you so much for being here today. I want to thank the CFO for bringing forward this important legislation, and to my co-sponsor, Senator DeSigli, who's partnered with me on this very vital bill. Whenever we begin the conversation about cutting back excessive local government spending, we are immediately bombarded by naysayers and big government supporters with arguments as to why it is impossible. It's just astounding. They want to know why we are trying to take their money away. There's a sense of entitlement to taxpayer dollars that has truly shocked me. So over the summer, I contacted the CFO and wanted to join in on his mission to rein in local government spending. Today, I'm proud to stand here to unveil some of the most important legislation we will see this year. We are taking a clear and necessary step to restore accountability, discipline, and basic fairness in local governments in Florida. Over the last 5 years, we have seen property taxes increase by nearly 50%. And this at a time when Florida's families are being asked to tighten their belts. To be direct, tax dollars have become a drug for local governments. And like any addiction, as long as the supply is unlimited, that behavior will not change. Through the CFO's audits, we have seen waste, fraud, and abuse from cities and counties across the state, and the only way to regain control of the situation is to cut off the supply. Worse still, local governments often brag about cutting millage rates to make it sound like they're financially responsible, but they don't mention that their citizens' taxes are still increasing by double-digit percentages. This is a problem statewide, both in rural and urban communities. When a local government can simply turn up the dial and feed its spending habits with little scrutiny and almost no personal consequences for the decision makers, taxpayers lose every single time. Florida's local governments are completely unmoored from their foundational responsibilities. This legislation will help redirect them back to their core mission. This bill codifies the Florida Agency for Fiscal Oversight within the Department of Financial Services, which is FAFO, as you know, and I love it so much I got this shirt. Its job is straightforward: identify unnecessary spending, audit local governments that seek to raise taxes, and educate officials on ethical fiscal management. Most importantly, it gives the state real enforcement tools. If a local government refuses to cooperate with audits and withholds information, the state can enforce penalties and withhold certain state funds until compliance is restored. This is not punitive. This is accountability. And the next time local government authorizes a referendum to raise taxes or increase millage rates, it triggers an audit. That audit examines spending, contracts, and financial practices. If officials refuse to cooperate, fines may be imposed. Continued noncompliance leads to something far more effective: the withholding of state funds until transparency is restored. This bill also maintains whistleblower protections and mandates an annual financial ethics training for local government employees and officials, and it expands public access to spending and contract data. Sunlight is not optional. Transparency is not negotiable. Now, let me be clear about what this bill does not do. It does not micromanage local budgets. It does not punish compliance. Responsible local governments, those that spend wisely, disclose fully, and respect taxpayers, will see no disruption at all. But those that treat taxpayers like an ATM, those that hide spending behind complexity, and those that assume the state will subsidize their reckless spending through our appropriations, well, folks, those days are over. This legislation puts taxpayers first. It restores the idea that government exists to serve the public and not merely to sustain itself and grow even larger. And it makes clear that access to state funds is a privilege earned through transparency, discipline, and respect for the people who pay the bills. I was sent to Tallahassee to represent the taxpayer, and I am proud to team up with CFO Ingoglia on this bill to do exactly that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Miller. I didn't get the memo on a t-shirt, or I would have worn mine also.